With the super slide, it can be fun to change direction and create an alternate perspective. Hi friends, and welcome back to Grace Company Quilting. Today we're talking about our quilting rulers that are manufactured by us, but they were designed by our friend Leah Day. Our quilting rulers come in two different sizes, 1/2 inch and a 1/4 inch. For a high shake machine, like the Little Rebel or your quilting machine, you want our 1/2 inch. If you have a domestic machine, it's a little bit smaller, it's a low shank machine, you want to use the 1/4 inch rulers. I used the slice ruler with our 45mm comfort cutter to create this Dresden plate. You can make a Dresden plate anywhere between 7 inch and 5.5 inch. And you get the added bonus of being able to echo your shapes as you're quilting. So let's take it on over to the machine and we'll show you just how it works. So we're going to align the edge of our ruler with the seam of our Dresden plate. And that's gonna get us a 1/4 inch echo along the inside of each one of these guys. So then come up the edge here and meet at that corner. Now again, we're ready to just align the edge of our ruler with the edge of our fabric, stitch until we get to the top, and then come down the other edge here. Just make sure as you go, you're smoothing everything out, so it has a nice hold to it. And then we'll come back down the other side and do the same thing. Meet back at our start point. And you end up with a beautiful echoed shape. You could echo it again, or you could use any of the other lines in here to make a 1/2 inch, a 3/4 inch echo. Just depending on what you're doing, make it you and have fun with it. We're gonna use the ditcher to echo these 1/4 inch lines around our Dresden plate. But first, we need to make some markings. I'm going to align the edge of my ruler with the coordinating Dresden plate up here, as well as coming down this edge and marking all the way down here. Our next mark is going to extend through the middle of this pink Dresden plate here. So what I'm going to do is use the markings on my ditcher tool here. You can see these lines, and I want to stop a 1/4 inch from this edge. So I am going to align this marking here along this 1/4 inch marking here. And then I'm going to align this edge of my ruler along the stitch line there. And that's going to allow me to stop right in this nook here. So we'll go ahead and hit play and then move that machine until we get up to the corner here. And then same thing. So I'm just going to align this edge of my ruler along the stitched line, and I'm not going to worry about the nook for this one. I'm just going to find where my ruler is going to hit there. And then you want to pay attention to the little markings you made and stop right on that pink line. Now I'm ready to move over and do the same thing. I'm just going to align that line here along this stitched line here. And I'm gonna stop there. And then same thing, just stitch until you hit that echo line here. And now we can do the same thing for the other side. We're back and we have a few panels that we can show you how we use that ditcher to create beautiful work. So you can see on this Dresden plate, we went all the way around with a 1/4 inch echo line. And then on the inside, we did an 1/8 inch all the way on the inside. We also used it here to create that echo of our Dresden plate that really filled in the space so nicely. On the left side here, I also used it to micro stipple and fill in to add a little bit of texture to our quilt as well. All I did was stitch and move the ruler, stitch and move the ruler, moving it across as I went so that I could use the ruler to get those nice straight lines in my micro stippling. The next ruler that we have is going to be that 2-inch feather ruler. We use this to create beautiful borders on our quilt. You can see here that we have that nice feather all the way along the edge of our quilt, and each one is symmetrical, so you don't have to worry about them being uneven. You get a perfect feather every time with that 2-inch feather. So let's take it to the machine and we'll show you how it works. So what I'm gonna do here is align this edge here on the ruler with my basting line. So that will end up looking just like that. So that'll keep my feathers all in a row as I go up the edge of my quilt. We'll come all the way around. I'm gonna move my tails out of the way, and then I'm gonna come back around and stop where my needle hits on this white line here. So you can see that line. Now I'm just going to slide my ruler into place again, making sure that my line here is aligned with my basting stitch, and this line sits right on top of that quilted line that I made earlier. So now we're ready to go again. We'll just stitch around, and then we have to come back up again to where that line meets. So we'll keep going and repeating that same motion. Stopping right on that edge and making sure that we're lining everything up. And we'll go all the way up to the top of our quiltable area and to the other side. So that is the feather ruler. It's great for adding texture to all your sashing. It can be great for borders, corners, you name it, but it makes a beautiful, perfect feather shape every time. The next ruler we have is the 2-inch circle. This guy is by far my favorite ruler in our lineup because it makes so many different shapes and variations of that circle. So the first thing I'm going to show you is how to make a scallop. And you can do this with either side of the ruler. So depending on whether you want to use the bottom or the top, it makes the same shape. Even though it looks a little smaller over here, that's just because your ruler is going along the inside versus the outside. And all I'm doing for this is aligning this nice line here with my basting stitch at the top. So that's just going to keep a consistent line all the way across. So my favorite part about using this side of the ruler for a scallop design is that you can technically get 2 scallops because this is a whole one and these 2 are both halves. Whereas if I use this side, it still has those same lines for me to line up my basting stitch on, but I only get 1 scallop out of it. So this side does allow me a little bit more freedom when it comes to making those scallops. So I'm going to use this side until we get all the way to the edge and we'll come back around the other direction. So you can see here that we made a nice scallop all the way along the edge of our quilt top. So now we're going to echo that. So what I want to do is line up this crosshair with the middle of these 2 scallops, and then I want to line up this crosshair that goes all the way across the ruler with that edge of the scallop from before. So this should allow me to just barely kiss the top of each scallop here. So we'll hug right close and you'll see how that works here. So we'll come along and around, and this will stop us just right at the perfect place. So we'll come around again, and for this, I'm just using the one side for now, but then I'll show you how to use all 3 pieces of that scallop. Now that we have a scallop, I want to make sure that this edge is aligned with the scallop, because that's my 1/4 inch there. And then I also want to pay attention to my crosshairs going vertically and horizontally. And just like that, it stops us just in the right spot. And you can see right here how nicely that came together and how nicely we're getting a good puff to our quilt top. So now we'll keep going. So you can see again, now we have that double scallop, and it almost kind of looks like a nice fun dragon scale, a mermaid scale. It makes a great border design with scallops, or just a great way to fill in an entire area. So let's show you how to do circles. So when you are aligning your ruler, you want to make sure that your crosshairs and that center margin is right on your seam. So you can see just like that, it's hovering right over that seam. And then you want the edge of this curve to be resting right over the edge of your Dresden plate. So what that's going to do is allow you to come just right along the edge where that 1/4 inch is. And just like that, you can see how nicely that scallop aligns there. So now what I'm going to do is align this curve and this curve with my stitched lines. You can see there's just those little guys right there, and they will slide perfectly over your ruler. So make sure your foot is nestled in that little hook there, and make sure your lines are squared up and over your stitches, and then just stitch around. Look at that. You end up with a perfect circle. To use this side of the ruler to do your perfect circle, what I'm going to do is align the center of this opening here with the seam of my Dresden plate. And then I'm also going to align these little white lines here. You can see here and here. I'm going to line those up so that they just barely touch the seam of my 1/4 inch echo line. So we'll start by bringing up our bobbin right here, because we know that's where we want our start point to be. We'll reposition everything, make sure it's all correct, and then we'll stitch along that scallop. I'll move that out of the way, trim my tails, and then slide it back around, and it does the same thing as the other side. So you have this nice little line here and here that marks your circle. And that will allow you to stop right at the same point. And you also get that nice curve, just like that. All right, so we're gonna fill in all the way around our Dresden plate here, just like this with our circle, and we'll meet you back. All right, so we've established our first layer of circles, you can see here. Now what I want to do is make another round of circles all the way around that creates a nice little wreath shape, but then we're going to do something fun with it. I am going to use the scalloped edge of the circle ruler, and same thing, I'm lining up these two curves with the edge of my seam, and then the center line goes through that point of my Dresden plate. We'll come back around, do the same thing, finish up that circle there. Ready to stitch. But now I want to create a circle that goes between these guys. So it'll overlap and make a fun little orange peel shape. What I'm going to do is align this stitch here for my circle with these two marks right here. And then the other thing I want to pay attention to is how equal the spacing is on this side. So as long as these two are aligned, I should be able to start. Now we're ready to stitch around and come back around. And just like that, you have some really awesome overlapping circles. This overlap is something that you could leave, or you could add something fun like micro stippling to it to really fill it in and add some texture. So for the mini slide, we're gonna go ahead and make a few little marks. And what I want to do here is create a line from the point of my circle here that goes all the way to the corner of my material. So I'm just using an erasable marker to get that line. All right, I'm going to find the center point on my mini slide, which is this line right here. And I'm going to put that right on the line we just made. And again, we're gonna make that 1/4 inch echo. Align your ruler. And come down. We'll do it one more time, just making sure that as we go, these lines will create echoes so we can line up not only our last stitch, but a couple of previous stitches as well to make sure that we're getting that line just the way we want it. And we'll do this a few times until we have enough texture here, and we're just echoing in those scallops as well. And then I will flip my ruler around because it makes that same curve on both sides. Adjust it to make sure everything is in line. Then we can stitch up until we come to that other side and bring it back down, same thing. Now what we'll do is come down the other direction. So to get the shape I'm looking for, we are going to come up across this area. So what I'm doing is aligning the center line on my Leah Day ruler here, this mini slide, with that pink line we drew earlier. So we'll come up and over, we'll just come around. Moving as we go. So we can keep our ruler aligned. But now, because we've done a few lines, we don't need that center line anymore. We can use those echo lines to get a nice feel. And just like that, you have a beautiful crosshair area. We're gonna go ahead and fill in the rest of our quilt and we'll be done. Now that we've shown you how it works, I really wanted to show you a couple of variations to what we did on the machine. This technique is very simple, and you can see here that I used a couple different sizes to be able to create this texture. So this corner here is going to be 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch. This little section here is 1/4 inch by 1/2 inch. And then this middle section is going to be that 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch. You can see it just by moving the ruler a little bit and using the different lines on the ruler, how nicely you can create completely different looks while using that same technique. The last ruler I have here is going to be the super slide. So you can see that the super slide is just a larger version of that mini slide ruler. It has a similar arc, just on a larger scale, so you get a little bit more length, but it does allow the opportunity to create a little bit of a different texture. So I'm gonna go ahead and use this echo line here. I did a 1/4 inch echo line all the way around my Dresden plate, and I'm going to line up the edge of my ruler along that line, and I want the corner to touch here. So I am just lining up that corner there and then lining up my edge here. And I'm gonna use light pressure to hold this down, and we're gonna stitch along the edge of the ruler until we get to the edge of our quilt. So for my next line, I'm gonna do a 1/4 inch echo line across here. So I'm going to bring up my bobbin right on the edge of that 1/4 inch echo line that we talked about before, and then I'm gonna use that needle jog to just barely put that needle onto the fabric. And then I'm going to line up my ruler along our stitch line. So you can see through the ruler here that that's right along the edge. And we're gonna go and stitch that 1/4 inch echo. And we're just gonna stitch all the way off the edge of our quilt. And then I'll move up about 1/4 of an inch since we're in our binding area. It doesn't matter if I'm gonna stitch in that area. And then I'll reposition my ruler again, just making sure that I am lined up on that echo line there. And then we're ready to stitch, and we'll meet back right where we tied off before. So those first 2 lines, if you're in the middle of your quilt, can sometimes be the hardest, but you just want to make sure you get that echo line, and then you can use the lines and the marks on your ruler to make sure that you're set up for success. Now that we've shown some stitching on the machine, I really did want to highlight and show you just how awesome it all came together. I was able to create these echoed shapes that go all the way around and complement the ruler work with some free motion. We added in some fun pebbles that created additional texture and puckering on our quilt. And then we were also able to make this fun middle section that really just came together to really elevate our quilt. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of Grace Company Quilting, featuring our Leah Day rulers. We're hopeful that you found this tutorial helpful, and we can't wait to see what you can create with our rulers. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Grace Company Quilting for more quilty content, and to follow us on social media. Share your posts with us. We want to see what you create with these rulers. Thank you so much, and have a great day.